Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Banyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, why has the National Police Commissioner decided to return 121 police dockets to the political killings task team? Where were these dockets all along? And does this decision mean that Police Minister Senzo Mkunu's instruction to disband the unit is now nullified? We speak to crime analyst Dr. Chris de Kock. Also on the show, will the new body announced by the Basic Education Minister strengthen the country's basic education system? We'll speak to the Minister, Siviwe Gwarube, this evening. And then later, was the dissolved South African Tourism Board targeted by the Tourism Minister for taking action against the SA Tourism CEO? The Minister has insisted that she took action against the board for illegally convening a meeting, among other issues. We'll speak to a former board member at SA Tourism. But first, my comment. So it's been confirmed 121 police dockets will be returned to the political killings task team, which was disbanded on the instruction of the Police Minister Senzo Mkunu. These dockets are key to KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhonazi's claims of political interference. You'll remember in July, Mkhonazi accused the Police Minister Senzo Mkunu of interfering in police operations and ordering the disbandment of the high-profile political killings task team and the removal of these 121 dockets from that unit. In fact, he claimed that the dockets have long been dormant for a few months now. The allegation was that Shadrack Sibiya took the documents from the task team on instruction of the minister. This is what Mkhonazi said at the time.
On the 26th of March 2025, this year, a total of 121 case dockets that were under investigation were taken away from the task team as directed by a Deputy National Commissioner Crime Detection, a Lieutenant General Sibiya, who was acting on the instruction of the Minister of Police to disband the team. This was done without the authority of the National Commissioner, nor I, as a Provincial Commissioner, was never informed.
Remember, the political killings task team was established in 2019 following the 2016 Moerane Commission's investigation into the root causes of the political killings in Kwa-Zulu Natal. The commission made comprehensive recommendations to address political violence, leading to the formation of the task team with a mandate to investigate and resolve unresolved political motivated murders, particularly in Kwa-Zulu Natal. The KZN Commissioner believes that the task force that investigated these political killings was actually uncovering some serious corruption in the SAPS and the criminal syndicates. The Police Commissioner, Fani Masemola, has since denied any involvement in the political task team's disbandment.
I'm sure you have not seen any letter that I've signed to close the unit. I have not signed it, and I don't think anybody have ever seen a letter where I've signed off the closure of the unit.
But there are some people that have claimed that this task team was a law unto itself and mismanaged its funds at some point. In fact, Mary de Haas is one of the people that has indicated that the task team was a law unto itself. The question we're asking you tonight, though, is what you think of this decision to return the dockets to the task team, which the minister disbanded. Do you think that the task team has proven its efficiency through the recent arrests that we have seen? You can send us a WhatsApp voice note right now on 078 459 1897. Remember to tell us your name and your surname and where you're sending the voice note from, and please keep it at 30 seconds. Alternatively, you can send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Let's stay on the story now of this 121 case dockets that were allegedly taken under the instruction of the Deputy National Police Commissioner for Crime Detection, Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya. They're now in the process of being returned to the Kwa-Zulu Natal Political Killings Task Team. That's according to Police Commissioner General Fanima Semula. Policing and crime analyst Dr. Chris de Kock joins us now via video link. Dr. de Kock, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, and good evening to the viewers.
What do you make of this decision by the Police Commissioner to now return the dockets to the task team? And does this mean that the decision of the minister to disband the task team is now nullified, because the task team can now do its work without questions around its legitimacy, I imagine?
Well, I think point number one, the minister should never have interfered in this task team. The task team was doing their job. The task team's investigation led them to places like Gauteng and elsewhere. It actually didn't stop with political killings, because we must remember that people who are involved in hits will not only stick to political killings, they will go for whistleblowers, they will go for other kind of people. They won't stick just to political killings. So I think the team in Kwa-Zulu Natal was doing their job. Their investigation led them further afield. And I think it was wrong of the minister to interfere in an operational. This is clearly a police operational task. I mean, the minister can't decide, no, I'm going to take this docket away from Detective X and give it to Detective Y, or I'm going to send it to Pretoria. So I think it's just going back to where it belongs. And I'm just worried that it's now news. It's actually news that this docket is going away, because I don't know how it's going to be transported, when it's going to be transported. I've listened to a radio station this afternoon, and to me it sounded that the docket was inspected this afternoon at police headquarters, and that they are actually on their way to KZN as we speak. Now, I'm a little bit worried about that, because that's our operational issue again.
Okay.
These are highly sensitive dockets, and I don't know what can happen.
But what this effectively means is that the minister's decision is now nullified, isn't it? Because if the decision was taken to disband the task team and the dockets were taken from this task team, and now the police commissioner decides that the dockets have to return to the same task team that the minister instructed that it be disbanded, and Shadrack Sibiya, according to, of course, the claims by the KZN police commissioner, then carried out that instruction. That means that the political task team now, it's now back to doing its work.
That is how I understand it. I think I understand it the same way as you understand it.
Okay.
And I really think that this should have never happened. We can't afford political interference in investigation. I mean, that's a clear police function. It's like political interference in where there's a riots and there's a political decision to interfere with the commander at the riot scene, or the same as with visible policing.
Yeah.
It should stay with the people who are in control.
What work has this task team been able to do from what you've seen so far, Dr. de Kock? I mean, we've seen some key arrests in Gauteng. Apparently, that's from the work that this task team has done. Do we know how successful this unit has been in its mandate?
Look, for me, I'm not a detective. I'm a crime expert. I'm more on crime analysis, intelligence, and visible policing. It's difficult to evaluate, but it seems if we look at the rest, and I think there's more to follow, and we will look when the commission starts. It's a pity it doesn't start next Monday, but we will see, I think, a lot of things still to happen, and I'm full of confidence that they have done a good job. That's why it seems today the National Commissioner Mr. Fani Masemola, or Lieutenant General Fani Masemola, have also announced a political killings team in Gauteng. Now that shows me that this thing was successful.
Yeah, and I'll get to that decision around Gauteng in a moment, but I want to also touch on some of the complaints that have been raised in as far as this task team is concerned. There are people who have sent complaints to Parliament, for instance, even to the Minister of Police around the work of the unit. Some have argued, like Mary de Haas, that it was a law unto itself, this unit, and that it mismanaged the funds. Do we know how much resources these kind of task teams actually receive? Is there a way for them to even account for the funds that they get allocated? Or do they use the slush fund, for instance, to say, this is a specialized task team, whatever resources that they're asking for, you've got to give them. But then the question is there an opportunity for them to account for the monies or any resources that get allocated to the unit?
Yeah, that's difficult to say, but I think there must be ways that they will have to account for whatever resources they receive.
Mm-hmm.
There is some control over it. I am fully confident at this stage.
Yeah.
I may later be disillusioned, but I'm fully confident that what happened in Kwa-Zulu Natal under the leadership of General Mangwanazi must be, I trust it.
Yeah. Let's go back to what you've just mentioned now around the decision by the police commissioner that Gauteng will also get its own political killings task team that will focus on high-profile cases. Do you think, as someone who has really observed crime and the trends, is that what's needed to get the ball rolling in as far as, attending to these criminal matters are concerned? Do we need task teams, specialized task teams, to be appointed in provinces where we're seeing that there are some high levels of crime?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to organized crime, when it's focused on something like heat squads, not only political killings, but killings of whistleblowers, killings of opposition, all these kind of things. I really think the solution is highly specialized investigation and also intelligence. You can't address organized crime without those two things.
Mm-hmm. So what does it mean then to have a task team tasked with focusing on priority crimes? How do you capacitate it? So do you take detectives? Are you bringing in intelligence? How does it work? How do you capacitate it so that it's able to deal with the priority crimes?
Well, as I say, I think what you do is you take your best detectives, the detectives that have a good track record of solving cases, even forensics, and then also intelligence. And you focus, you literally register projects on individuals that you suspect are in this game of hit squads and organized crime, and you focus on them, and you even register undercover operations to come to the heart of and to the who's who of organized crime and who are involved in these hit squads. And when you have enough information, enough intelligence, which you can then transform to evidence, and you are sure that now you have got enough evidence, not just intelligence or information, then you actually take down those groups and arrest them and take them to court.
Yeah. What about the cases that those detectives that are doing well are already focusing on? I mean, you know about the capacity constraints in the SAPS. There are detectives that are dealing with a lot of cases. So when you are bringing them to be part of a task team and focus on these priority crimes, are you not taking them away from some cases they were investigating, given, of course, the capacity constraints in the SAPS?
Yeah, you now have me in a corner. We all know, there's a total lack of capacity when it comes to the detective service. Unfortunately, a detective can't be made. You can't just send a detective. You can't just take any recruit and then send them to the college. And after 6 weeks, they come back and now they have got a course in detection, some other detection, and then they are a super detective. I mean, this is experience. This is really experience over many, many years. And we know people went on pension. People left the police for other more lucrative jobs. And the police have lost a lot of capacity. But I still think they are still left there. And unfortunately, when it comes to organized crime and when it comes to hit squads and these kind of crime, it will be better to take people away from the normal investigation and put them into these task teams. Because the damage which is done by organized crime and by specifically hit squads is massive. I mean, that is the basis of corruption. It is the basis of, political killings. So I think this is, you have to prioritize. When you have scarcity, when you don't have money, let me use this example. If you don't have money to do everything you want to do, at least you have to start to prioritize and identify those things which are of essential nature.
Well, Dr. Chris de Kock, thank you so much for joining us on Face the Nation this evening. Again, the question we've been asking you this evening is what you make of this decision by the police commissioner that these dockets have to go back to the political killings task team. How much confidence do you have in the work of the task team? We've seen some arrests, some successes. We are told that emanates from the work that the task team has done already. Let us know your thoughts. Send us a WhatsApp voice note, or you can send us an X or at Face the Nation SABC. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Now, the Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Gwarube, has announced a new body that will provide expert advice to strengthen policy making in the country's basic education system. The 16-member National Education and Training Council was announced yesterday and will advise the Minister on education policy matters, focusing on a number of urgent priorities. The Minister of Basic Education joins us now in studio. Minister, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, and thank you very much for having me. I think perhaps before we jump into the conversation, I think it would be amiss of me to not really, pay tribute to, I think, to the media fraternity as a whole, but I think South Africans as a whole, to somebody who has passed on very suddenly, Tsidi Madia, who we've learned to respect, who held us to account, asked tough questions, but was always fair. And I just want to extend my deepest condolences to her friends and to her family and to South Africans at large. Thank you, Minister.
Let's talk about this council now. What is actually going to be their role?
So firstly, I think let's take a quick step back. The National Education Policy Act, which was promulgated in 1996, made provision for the establishment of such a body. And then in fact in 2009, the then minister promulgated regulations that would essentially give effect to the body, but it was never really operationalized. And so one of the things that I sought to do when I was appointed was to say, in a context that is fiscally constrained, in a context where we can ill afford to hold on to ideas and policy ideas because of nostalgia or because of how things have always been done, we have to make sure that as policymakers that we are evidence-led at all times. My view is that this council is a great resource because it's a group of experts that come from various sectors of the education umbrella body, people who specialize in early child development, people specialize in inclusive education, people who specialize in education policy, former HODs, people who've really even had classroom experience. And my view is that bringing this body together is going to be able to assist us in being able to have this resource where we can tap into for evidence-led policy making. There's already a couple of things that we would like them to start to focus on. And these 4 things are quite urgent. The one, Clement, is how do we define what the minimum package of foundation phase is? So when we talk about quality foundation phase, what do we mean? So a principal who's leading a school, a primary school in Umkanduli, how do they know that they are on the right path of delivering quality foundation phase? What does the staffing need to look like? What does the numeracy and literacy curriculum need to look like? So they need to be able to advise that so that as we roll out the policy, we know that it's evidence-led. The other issue is around resourcing. We know that many schools are still classified as quintile 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but some of these classifications are outdated, Clement. There are children who go to quintile 5 schools, who need to be in no-fee schools, who need access to the school nutrition program, but aren't because they go to a particular school that's in a different area. The administrative burden on educators, also another burning issue. And then lastly, I mean, South Africans have been really talking about the issue around, this myth around the 30% pass rate. And so we have been at pains to explain that this is always a balance between how do we make sure that progression is fair and in terms of international benchmarking, but at the same time allows for children to go into other streams of the curriculum. However, we can't be blinded and deafened to people saying, can you look at this? Is this something that needs to be reviewed? So those are some of the things that they're going to immediately start working on.
Okay, and I want us to talk more about some of the priorities that you've mentioned, but isn't the work of this team going to duplicate other councils that already exist within the education system? How are they going to complement each other?
It's a very good question, because it's important to understand that the council is not a decision-making body, but an advisory body to the minister. Remember, and as per the legislation, my role is to set policy, regulation, legislation, and so it's quite important that when we embark on policy-making processes, that we have a resource. Of course, we've got in-house research in the department. We've got the body that is contained of all the HODs in the country, HEDCOM, all the MECs, the Council of Education Ministers, and this council does not seek to replace or duplicate the work that's done there. Remember, as the Council of Education Ministers, we deliberate on a body of evidence that's already been developed, and then we talk about how do we implement this? Is this the right direction to go? And for me, having an extra layer of people who've been in the sector, who have earned their stripes in the sector, saying, look, this is how it's worked in other countries. This is how it's worked in other provinces. How do we scale? Especially, as I say, in a financially constrained environment, we can't simply be led in policy making blindly. Yeah,
let's talk about foundational learning, because there is a crisis in literacy and numeracy. We've got children at lower grades that can read for meaning, for understanding. What exactly do you want to see there? Are we going to talk about an overhaul, perhaps, of the education system, curriculum? What do you oversee as advice coming from this task team?
I think firstly, I mean, one of the things is, I'm very careful not to talk about overhauling of the system, because the South African curriculum has been very steady for a couple of years. But there has definitely have to be a need to reorientate the system. So what do I mean by that? If there's a pyramid, I think we should look at the education system as an inverted pyramid. So if we've put a lot of stock in matric pass rates in the past, in the grades between 10, 11, and 12, obsessing about whether enough learners are taking maths and science, whether enough learners are passing maths and science, can they get into, institutions of higher learning? Yes, that obsession was warranted, but we did so at the expense of ignoring the foundations of learning. And our view is that if you strengthen the foundations of learning, you then don't have to obsess about these things, because the research is clear that if you get the first 10 years of a child's life right, so from 0 to 10 years until they turn and they get to grade 4, if they're able to read and calculate confidently and write confidently, they are easily able to take up additional languages. They are easily able to do maths, science, and other previously said difficult subjects. So we have to invert the pyramid, Clement, where we are putting a lot of stock in terms of the compulsory grade R, ECD, foundation phase, similarly to how we've done with matric pass rates. In fact, for me, my wildest dream is to one day have a similar kind of celebration, similar to at the level of matric results for children who are 6 years old, who are in grade R, the test that they take determining whether or not they cognitively developed enough to get to grade 1. Understanding just that rate, how many children in South Africa who are 6 are actually ready for grade 1? How many children who are 5 are thriving and ready for grade R, which is now formal schooling? So that's the kind of reorientation I think we need to do without obviously ignoring the FET phase.
How does that reorientation address the issue of resources, like procuring, for instance, educational material? There are some schools that are absolutely under-resourced, so you can have these bold plans, but do we have the good teachers? Is there material available for them to enhance their education?
So firstly, I mean, we've had to do a number of things. So I think number one, the move of ECD into basic education was absolutely the correct one. I think it's one of those reforms that are going to really set us in good stead for years to come. The second thing is the making of grade R compulsory as the compulsory school going age. That's incredibly important because now you're going to have children starting school at 6 years old. Countries who are thriving in terms of education outcomes will tell you that if you look at a child from 0 all the way to 18 and further education and training, you've got yourself a child who's going to be able to thrive. Of course, Clement, this conversation can't exist in a vacuum. We know that we haven't had additional funding from Treasury to accommodate the rollout of compulsory grade R. So provinces have had to absorb that. However, we are having engagements with Treasury around where there are provinces that are struggling to make that accessible. Because remember, because it's now law, a parent can easily go to the department, go to courts and say, I want to take my child to grade R, but the nearest school that offers grade R is 57 kilometers away from me. So those things have to, so while we have the plans and the law in place, we have to balance it out with the finances that we have in place. But also, what we do have going for us is the 10 billion rand allocation for early child development, which is over the medium term period. So that is going to go a long way in incorporating ECD. But, Clement, we'll still have the challenge of there are some practitioners who were teaching grade R, which was not compulsory, but who are not necessarily educators, right? Who are not fully qualified educators. They may be practitioners who've got years in the system, but they may not be qualified. We've identified 7,000 of those practitioners who've indicated to us that they are prepared to be able to be upskilled. And so we've already secured funding for those 7,000 grade R practitioners to be able to be upskilled so that they can have a B.Ed, so that they are fully fledged educators. So yes, there's a lot of work to be done, but I don't think it's insurmountable. But I am pleading with South Africans that we're not going to get it right overnight. But I think we've already started to reorientate the ship in a particular way. And if we continue in this track, we will be able to see universal access to ECD by 2030. We'll be able to see a schooling system that is seamless in years to come.
I want to talk about the classification of schools, quintile 1 to, is it 4 or 5?
5.
Until 5. What sometimes leads to the misclassification?
It's purely because in the past, schools were classified according to the area that they're in, right? So recently I was visiting a school in Glen Vista. Now that school was built because of pressures in the area where there were a lot of kids who were needing to go to school. And so the school was started, it was literally temporary structure that was started because of the sheer pressure in the area. Now that school by the quintile system is classified as a quintile 5 school. But the children who go to that school are not fee-paying children. They don't come from well-off families where they should be charged fees. Also, that school requires a lot more state intervention. So that also affects how schools are funded, the norms and standards, the payments that are made to schools in terms of being able to administer the school. Then the other issue is around children who need school nutrition. In some provinces, school nutrition is only from quintile 1 to 3. So that's why I'm saying that South African communities have changed significantly because of people who are coming into cities, who may be settled in a particular place, but it doesn't mean that that school is necessarily quintile 5. So we have to go to the school itself, look at the children in that school, look at the needs of that school, and classify it correctly. Otherwise, we risk having schools that are in affluent areas, but that don't get the kind of funding, teachers they need, and even nutrition that they need.
Okay. Before we wrap up, I want to ask about the BELA Act. How is that going, the implementation and the formulation of the regulations? If I'm not mistaken, earlier this month, the department released 2 out of the 8 BELA Act regulations. Is there any delay in implementing the BELA Act?
Not at all. So we released the 2 regulations relating to capacity and admission. And in fact, we should be receiving the closing of comments is on the 5th of September. And so we're really asking South Africans to please get involved in that process. And so the remaining 6 are in various stages of completion. Some are with the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor. And I just want to quickly clarify here that firstly, the regulations making process is a very involved process. You know, we don't just draft these regulations on our own. We have to put together task teams. Once we've got the drafting, we have to send it to the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor for them to certify that in fact this does meet legal muster and it's not a departure from the Principal Act. Then we can publish. Then when we get the comments, we can then have final regulations. And I also want to just by comparison, for instance, point out, for instance, that the National Health Insurance took 18 months to get its regulations published. So we were ambitious in saying we want to do it in 6-7 months because of the sheer interest in this piece of legislation. So I'm quite proud of the work that the team is doing, and we will be releasing the tranches of the remaining regulations.
All right, Minister, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you very much, Clement.
After the break, we'll start with some of your WhatsApp voice notes that have come through and tweets responding to the question we've been asking you about this decision that the National Police Commissioner has taken to return the dockets to the Political Killings Task Team. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Here's a reminder of the question we've been asking you tonight on Face the Nation. What do you make of the announcement made by the National Police Commissioner, Fanima Semola, regarding the returning of over 100 dockets to the Political Killings Task Team? Let's start with your tweets. Sabelo says, personally, I'm happy the political task team will be given back its dockets. The decision to take the dockets from the task team really cost them time where they could have made more arrests by now. Evidence is now compromised, but let's hope for the best. Julia says, I think the Minister Mkhunu should not have interfered in this matter. Hence, I salute the National Commissioner for bringing those dockets back into the task team. We want criminals and murderers in prison. Dennis says the situation highlights deep divisions within the South African Police Service and raises concerns about the integrity of investigations into political killings. Sidwell says it goes to show that there was a dirty hand in the disbanding of the Political Killings Task Team, and it partly exonerates General Mkhwanazi about his allegations. And that's precisely the point, right? In fact, the police commissioner indicated a while back that there is no letter out there with his signature that was sanctioning and approving this instruction from the police minister, because as the man that deals with operations, as a commissioner, he had to give the go-ahead, and that's why his argument is that there's no letter out there with my signature on it that approves this task team. But Shadrack Sibiya is arguing that there was in fact an approval from the office of the police commissioner, but all of this hopefully will be clarified at that inquiry that will be looking at this possible corruption and political interference in the criminal justice system. Here are some of your WhatsApp voice notes that have come through.
Hi, this is Rofuno from Limpopo, Toyando. I think the return of the documents shows that more Mkwana's allegation is true and the only truth. This is Rufuno Singo from Toyando Venda.
Good evening, Clement. Wow, this is wonderful. This is great news. This shows that there's progress in the claims that the Lieutenant General Mkwanazi has made in July. And it shows that he was not just talking nothing, but there was something behind what he was talking. So this is great. Progress has been made, and let those who are involved be held accountable. Sure.
Good evening, Clement. I'm Sandy from Newcastle. You don't know how happy am I to hear that those Dockets will be brought back to KZN, and then now we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we're going to know what was the reason behind those Dockets taken from the task team to Pretoria. So I think now the heads will roll. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for all of your voice notes and your tweets as well. Let's move to this now. Former members of the now dissolved South African Tourism Board are considering legal action. This comes after Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille dissolved the board, alleging that it acted unlawfully and exceeded its powers when it took a resolution on August 1st. The board has denied such a meeting and insists that the grounds on which the minister relied on to dissolve it are factually inaccurate. Maya de Reyk Ace is a former SA Tourism Board member and joins us now via video link. Maya, thank you for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for having me tonight.
What reasons did the Minister of Tourism give to disband this board?
Well, it seems the minister has given more than one reason. So when you go through the various interviews that she's been holding over the past week, she first had stated that the reason for dissolution was due to an unlawful meeting that the previous board had held on the 1st of August. I think it's been categorically stated by in particular Lawson Naidoo, who speaks on the behalf of the previous board, that no such meeting took place, and any records can be perused and looked at to actually state that categorically. The minister also said in another interview that the reason for dissolution was the fact that there was an unlawful resolution held, and based on that, we needed to be dissolved. So I think it's really interesting when you actually look at the sequence of interviews that the minister's held and how she, as I said, has stated at least two reasons for dissolving the board.
Yeah. How did you arrive as the previous board at the decision to appoint Lawson Naidoo as a board representative? When was that decision taken?
So I think you'll have heard from the various interviews held that the previous chair resigned on the 31st of July in a quarterly board meeting that we held on that day. It's unclear to us when he resigned to the minister. He resigned to us on that day. And as you will know, the board took a round-robin resolution on the 1st of August to appoint Lawson Naidoo as our representative because we didn't have anyone to speak on behalf of the board. I think it's really important to just clarify we did not appoint him as the chair. We don't have those powers. But I think it's also really important to note that we had sent a vote of no confidence or a motion of no confidence through to the minister 2.5 weeks before the resignation of that chair to say he's not competent to do the role. And so the board absolutely unanimously decided that Lawson was our spokesperson. We needed someone to speak on our behalf. We can't do it collectively all at the same time.
So that decision was taken on the 1st of August?
Yes, via a round-robin resolution.
Okay, so isn't that the meeting that the minister is referring to when she says that that meeting was not duly constituted and it was illegal?
Well, there was no meeting. I think that's the important point. We had just gone via round robin to actually declare that we would want Lawson to speak on our behalf. And remember, there's various electronic means, so we can talk via WhatsApp or email, etc. There was most certainly no meeting held on the 1st of August, and I think that's been categorically stated a few times. So I think what's a little bit confusing to the South African public, and actually to us as the previous board as well, that the minister initially went out and said she's dissolving us based on this unlawful meeting, but she actually reverted on that in a later interview to say, no, she's actually resolving us on an unlawful resolution.
Okay, so please just clarify to our viewers, when you say there was no meeting, but as board members, this is a resolution that you took, you've got other electronic means to decide on that. How did you decide on that?
I can't exactly recall, and I would need to go back, but I believe we had a very brief conversation on WhatsApp. There was no meeting in person or online to actually say we all unanimously would like Lawson to be that person that speaks on our behalf. I mean, I think it was very clear at that stage already we needed someone, right? Because 2.5 weeks prior to the chair resigning, we'd already told the minister and we'd sent a written vote of no confidence to say there's no way that the board can actually act in any kind of effective manner with the chair that was implemented at that time. And bearing in mind, we would been asking for 9 months to have a deputy chair, and we had no deputy. So we needed someone to represent us. So we actually had no other choice but to appoint someone for that. And if I may say so, you know, we have a fiduciary duty. So, I mean, if we would have just sat back and done nothing, that would have been considered a lot worse than actually appointing someone, which, by the way, interpretation of the Act, you can, to act on, well, to speak on our behalf, not act on our behalf.
And through the interpretation of the Act, you can do so via, for instance, the way that you had elected to do it, through WhatsApp, where I would imagine you've got a group and everybody just supported whatever was proposed, that Lawson Naidoo is the guy that's going to speak for the board. So as the board, that is how some decisions can be taken via WhatsApp.
Well, I mean, it's not a decision we took actively via WhatsApp. I think when on the 1st of August came, and again, I would need to go back on the exact fact, and I don't have that in front of me right now, so I would appreciate if we can confirm that. But already Lawson had taken a very strong leadership role, and by the way, may I just say, I know that the minister has stated that he tried to get that position of the board, which is completely unfounded, but he indeed is a natural leader, and I think the board just kind of navigates it towards him to say, we'd like you to represent us and not anyone else.
The minister also indicated in one of the interviews that there was an SIU report that was received by the board in April, and by July it wasn't attended to. Are you aware of that report as the previous board?
Well, I'm firstly aware of what the minister said. I think it's really important to state that we were eventually made aware of that report, but we also had other very important matters to deal with that were prioritized. So we actually had to deal at the time with the Ngombani report, as well as the annual financial statements, which I'm sure you are aware are once again qualified, and there were a couple of major issues regarding that. And at the time, we did actually also write to the CEO on outstanding matters regarding that particular SIU report.
But how problematic was that SIU report? Was it concerning to you as the board? And did you not think that it warranted that urgent attention?
It did, but there were similarities with that report also with regards to what came out in the Ngombani report. Okay.
So do you believe then, as the previous board, that the minister targeted you because you took action against the CEO?
You know, I sat on the previous board, so I'm one of the 3 board members that has been in 2 of the boards now, right? And of course, when you first enter a board, it actually takes a fairly long time, and I would say it probably takes at least 12 months to actually understand what's happening, right? Just remember that we don't meet daily. I mean, we're meeting usually on a quarterly basis, and it takes a time to understand what is happening in an organization, what the leadership is like, what the executive leadership is like. And what I can categorically state, having been on both those boards, the one you will recall, basically that most of the board resigned in the end of September 2024. The chair and deputy chair were demoted. They eventually resigned. And the patterns and the themes were exactly the same. And that's the one big observation that I have and my other two board members that were previously there had. There's a pattern of the minister appeared to be essentially protecting the CEO. Every time there was a matter brought up around some of the misgivings of the CEO and reports that indicated that she wasn't acting within her duties and actually not doing her role appropriately, that we then was somehow pushed aside. And that's exactly what happened now. So as soon as we wanted to suspend the CEO, we quite quickly got dissolved.
Well, the minister says the CEO remains suspended. She's not protecting her. And even the new board that will come in will have the latitude to deal with that matter. But she has said during interviews that the CEO remains suspended and the law has to take its course.
Yes. But that's the fascinating part for me, because the minister has dissolved us based on what seems to be a process issue, which I think can very much be disputed in court. Yeah. And yet the substance of the matter that this board and the last board brought forward to the minister around the CEO, the minister is now actually carrying forward, right? She's saying the CEO remains suspended. So why, I guess the curious question that I have is, why would you do that and then appoint an interim board who have no previous knowledge, no previous kind of legacy history? It's going to take the new interim board or any new board probably another 12 months to get up to speed. Why? The logic doesn't quite tie up. So there's this whole point about substance over form, like CEO needs to be suspended, and yet the board gets dissolved on what looks like a process issue and clearly is being disputed right now. Yeah.
Since you've indicated that you were in the first and the second board, there is also something that came out over the last couple of days that, in fact, the name of this suspended CEO, when it was recommended to the minister, it was not even, the first recommendation of the board. Are you able to confirm that? Because what the minister has said is that this was the only name that the board recommended to her. That's the only name that then she had taken to cabinet.
So I can't comment on that because that recommendation was made by the interim board at the time, which I remember, believe was Tim Harris, and I think there were two other people. So they made that recommendation to the minister. So I was not on the board at that time. I only followed after that appointment and recommendation of the CEO.
Okay. So one other thing the minister said was that the CEO has written letters to the board complaining about some senior officials and nothing was done about that. Is that the case? How did you act as the board based on the complaints or even concerns that the CEO raised around senior officials at SA Tourism?
Are you referring to the grievances that were raised? There was a grievance raised by the COSEC, the company secretary, essentially, head of legal, and the CMO. Is that the matter that you're referring to?
I'm referring to the concerns that were raised specifically by the CEO. Are you aware of any letters that were written by this suspended CEO where she was complaining about senior officials as the board? Did those letters get to you?
The senior officials within her executive team?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to recall the sequence of events. So what I can share is that there were two grievances lodged by the COSEC, which obviously reports into the board against the CEO. And the minister raised the fact that the board didn't, respond to that. So that, in that case, I can tell you the chair at the time, who's no longer, that was his full kind of responsibility to do in terms of his role as a chair. And as a board, we raised it several times. And then there was another grievance raised by the CMO against the CEO, which we then did deal with as a board, because you have various committees through which that can be dealt with.
Oh, so to be clear, the only complaints that were raised, the letters that were written, were against the CEO, and they were not from the CEO against some of the members of the executives.
Yeah, so there were grievances raised by some members of the executive against the CEO, yes.
All right.
I'm sorry, I can't recall right now a letter or letters from the CEO against senior officials, but I don't want to be completely quoted on that, because we have dealt with thousands of emails literally over the last few months.
All right. Maya Derek Ace, thank you so much for speaking to us and for providing clarity on what could possibly be behind the dissolution of this board. Maya was in that first and, of course, the second board. Thanks for making time for us. And thanks to you for watching the Thursday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.